Dr. Desjarlais.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governors, for being here today. Governor Walker, I believe your state, my home state of Tennessee, has constitutional requirements to balance the budget. Obviously, that constitutional requirement does not exist in Washington, D.C. Do you believe that these constitutional requirements give you additional support and leverage you need to make the difficult decisions that need to be made to get your fiscal spending under control?
Yes, and I think both of us as governors talk about the fact that as governors, even regardless of party, for us to succeed and to have states that grow the economy, we have to have a balanced budget. Whether there's a constitutional requirement, a legal requirement, or otherwise, I think the states that are going to succeed, regardless of who the governors, are the states that take their fiscal challenges head on.
Okay, thank you. This last election, it was pretty clear to me, coming from the private sector, that the American people have sent a referendum that they feel government overall is too large and it's too intrusive and it's in the way of creating jobs. And so, yeah, I take heed to that as we sit in these hearings and we justify a lot of the programs within the Federal Government, whether they're good or not, and we had discussions whether or not private sector versus public sector pay is fair. Governor Walker, how would you gauge the pay and benefits afforded to the public sector workers in Wisconsin? Critics have said that your reforms are hurting a group of workers that are already worse off than their private sector counterparts. Are they wrong?
Well, let me just point out two quick things on that. One, this debate to me has never been about the level of pay or compensation, because I think there are great people who work at the city, the county, our school district, state government. I've said that repeatedly. What this is about is balancing the budget and making sure we can do it long term and giving our state and local governments the tools. Now, there have been plenty of studies, and there are studies all over the map. There are studies that show that whether you have a higher education degree or not, whether it's higher or lower, I think the key is, again, if you look at, when I've toured the state, when I talk to the constituents I have, and I talk to people in the middle class working at our factories and farms and other locations, they realize they're the ones that foot the bill for more and more government. And they think it's realistic that if they're paying on average 20% for health care, they're paying something for their pension or their 401k or whatever they might have, they think it's realistic that the rest of us who work in the government pay something similar to that.
Thank you. Governor Shumlin, you had mentioned in your testimony earlier that you went to where the money was to help get your fiscal house in order, and you mentioned health care. I was wondering if you had some insight that you could share with us to how you went about that, and if you have a solution to the health care crisis and the cost.
Wow. Well, how long do we have? The answer is yes. We are working very hard to pass a health care bill that will be the first in the country where health care is a right and not a privilege, where it follows the individual, is not required by the employer, which we think will be a huge jobs creator, but most importantly, as Governor Walker suggested earlier when he was talking about health care, where we actually reimburse providers based upon keeping people healthy, health care outcomes, instead of the fee-for-service model. And we've put together an ambitious plan. We're passing the Senate almost as we speak. It's already passed the House, so I'm going to sign it into law. And then we're going to come down to Congress and beg you for a few waivers. And so I'm so glad we have this opportunity to start begging now.
Okay. We'll be interested to see how that turns out, because we certainly have our challenges here. Do you believe that collective bargaining is really a basic human right?
I believe it's a basic right in a democratic society. And, you know, I say that as a guy who grew up born and raised in Vermont. My ancestors, like so many of us probably in this room, came to this country with nothing, passed through Ellis Island, ended up picking beets. My great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather out in the Midwest somewhere. And frankly, were it not for the right to collectively bargain, I don't believe that my relatives or most middle-class Americans would have the opportunities for economic progress that they enjoy today.
Okay. You had made a comment outside the National Governors Association meeting that the ability to collectively bargain is a basic human right in democracy. Now, this is in direct contradiction with Franklin Roosevelt, who was a pro-union person, and he said meticulous attention should be paid to the special relations and obligations of public servants to the public itself and to the government. The process of collective bargaining, as usually understood, cannot be transplanted into public service, and he goes on to say, a strike of public employees manifests nothing less than intent on their part to obstruct the operations of government until their demands are satisfied. Can you comment on that?
I just say that even someone as great as Roosevelt could be wrong once.
I might disagree on that point, but my time is out, and I thank you for your comments. I yield back.